Hello everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Today, I have a story for you that is both chilling and deeply emotional. It's a tale that comes to us from a small town nestled in the mountains of Sichuan Province, China, back in the year 1966. This was the beginning of the Cultural Revolution, a time of great upheaval and change across the country. In this particular town, the local school had been shut down, its students sent home as the nation braced for reform. The classrooms fell silent, the playgrounds emptied, and an eerie quiet settled over the once lively grounds. Only one person remained, a dedicated teacher named Mr. Liang. He wasn't required to stay, but his sense of duty was strong. He felt a deep connection to the school, to the hundreds of children who had passed through its halls, and he couldn't bear to see it fall into neglect. So, day after day, he would go to the deserted school to clean the classrooms, wipe down the dusty blackboards, and straighten the little wooden desks, keeping the place ready for the day the children might return. The days were long and lonely, filled only with the echoes of his own footsteps. But it was the nights that were the most unsettling. The town was small and isolated, and darkness fell quickly in the valley. One evening, as Mr. Liang was finishing his work, a flicker of movement caught his eye. He looked up toward the back of the classroom, near a window that overlooked the overgrown fields behind the school. And there, sitting quietly at a small desk, was a little girl. He couldn't see her face clearly in the dimming light, but one thing stood out vividly. She was wearing a bright red raincoat. It was the kind of vibrant, almost defiant red that you couldn't miss. Mr. Liang frowned, a sense of confusion washing over him. It hadn't rained in weeks. The air was dry, and the ground outside was cracked and dusty. Why would a child be wearing a raincoat? He thought perhaps she was a former student, maybe one who lived nearby and had wandered in out of boredom. "Little girl," he called out gently, his voice echoing in the empty room. "It's late, you should be getting home." The figure didn't move. She just sat there, a small, still silhouette against the darkening window. Mr. Liang took a step closer. "Are you all right? Who are you?" As he approached, the girl seemed to dissolve. One moment she was there, a solid shape in the gloom, and the next, she was gone. Vanished into thin air, Mr. Liang blinked, rubbing his eyes. Had he imagined it? The stress, the loneliness, Maybe his mind was playing tricks on him. He walked over to the desk where she had been sitting. The wooden chair was empty. But as he reached out to touch it, his fingers came away wet. A small, dark puddle had formed on the seat, as if someone soaked to the bone had been sitting there just moments before. A cold shiver traced its way down his spine. It wasn't his imagination. The next morning, the unease lingered. Mr. Liang decided to ask some of the villagers who lived in the small cluster of houses near the school. He described the little girl, the striking red raincoat. He hoped someone could explain the strange encounter. An old woman, her face a road map of wrinkles, listened patiently. When he finished, she shook her head slowly, a look of deep sadness in her eyes. "There are no young girls living near the school, teacher," she said softly. "Not anymore, not since the flood." The flood, Mr. Liang remembered it all too well. It had happened 5 years earlier. A sudden, violent summer storm had caused the river to swell, turning it into a raging torrent. The old wooden bridge at the back of the school, the one the children used as a shortcut to get home, had been swept away. He remembered the panic, the screams, the desperate search. Several children, on their way home from his very class, had been lost that day. The memory was a scar on the town's heart. That evening, a heavy feeling settled in Mr. Liang's chest. He couldn't shake the old woman's words. Driven by an impulse he didn't understand, he left the schoolhouse and began walking toward the river, toward the site of the old, collapsed bridge. The moon was high and bright, casting long, skeletal shadows across the landscape. The air was still and quiet, the only sound the gentle lapping of water against the muddy bank. And then he saw it, there, Half buried in the dark, wet mud near the water's edge was a flash of crimson. It was the Red Raincoat. It lay there, tangled in the reeds, looking as if it had been washed ashore just moments ago. A strange mix of dread and sorrow compelled him forward. He had to know. He waded into the shallow, murky water, the cold seeping into his shoes. As he reached down to pick up the sodden garment, the air around him dropped in temperature, becoming instantly bitingly cold. Before his fingers could touch the fabric, a small hand shot out from the mud and gripped his wrist. It was pale, clammy, and impossibly strong. He gasped, trying to pull away, but the grip was like iron. A child's whisper, thin and ethereal, seemed to come from the water itself, curling around him like a cold fog. "Teacher," it said, the voice filled with a hollow, watery echo, "you forgot to count us." Suddenly, a fierce wind howled through the river valley, rattling the broken timbers of the old bridge. It sounded like voices, dozens of them calling out from beneath the water, their cries lost and mournful. Terror seized Mr. Liang. He ripped his arm free and scrambled back to the bank, not daring to look behind him. He ran, his heart pounding in his chest, all the way back to the safety of the school, bolting the door behind him. Several days passed. The villagers noticed Mr. Liang's absence. He was a man of routine, and his disappearance was alarming. A small group of them decided to check the school. When they arrived, they found the heavy front doors creaking wide open. Inside, the classrooms were silent and cold. But it was the sight on the main blackboard that made them all freeze in place. Written in neat chalk, in Mr. Liang's familiar handwriting, was a final, chilling message. "All students present now," and beneath those words, on the dusty floor, were countless tiny, damp footprints. They led from every single desk in the classroom, converging at the teacher's chair. Propped in the corner of the room, as if placed there with care, hung the small, bright red raincoat. It was dripping steadily onto the floor, forming a puddle that never seemed to shrink, a pool of water that never, ever dried. Mr. Liang was never seen again. To this day, the ruins of the old school still stand, slowly being reclaimed by nature. And the local people say that on rainy nights, if you get close enough, you can still hear the faint, ghostly voice of Mr. Liang taking attendance, calling out the names of his students one by one. And if you listen very, very carefully, you can hear the soft, watery whispers of children answering him from the shadows, their voices finally at peace, their roll call complete at last. Thank you so much for joining me for this story. It's a sad one, but also a powerful reminder of the bonds that can exist between a teacher and their students, bonds that sometimes, it seems, not even death can break. If this story moved you, please hit that like button and consider subscribing to the channel for more tales from the shadows. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Until next time, stay safe and take care.